Well, welcome everyone. Here we've got Larry, Venus, and myself for another get together. Larry, it's great to see you.
Good to be with you, Hector. How's everything going with you?
Life is good. Girls are good. Everything. It's busy right now. You've got the last week of session right now, and so you've got different clients going a little bananas because you've got legislation that's being amended. Some being dropped, some like, oh no, are they going to do a gut and amend, where they take out all that piece of legislation and insert a brand new one as we get into these. I think now we're getting close on the 72-hour notice. And so if the shenanigans happen, it'll happen between today and tomorrow. And then, we're off to the races.
And I've noticed that, when you're the ruling party, you can make exceptions and violate your own rules and even the rules of the people, because now they've put in they're allowing amendments to bills to go beyond the 72-hour limit. They put in a joint resolution that's going to pass, and they're addressing 2 or 3 bills. I don't recall which ones, but again, example of the ruling party just thumbing their nose at the people of California.
So how did they do that? So what happens is there argument that because the majority of the bill was already there, they're just making a couple tweaks?
Yeah, I guess. And that as long as both houses agree to it, they'll allow amendments beyond the 72-hour limit.
That'd be an interesting thing to get over to Charles Munger, who was, as you know, one of the proponents for making sure that at the very least, that before the members of the legislature voted on a piece of legislation, that it had to be in print for 72 hours, not only giving them the ability to be able to read it or their staff, but also really giving the public the ability and the press to be able to read what was in the bill as best as possible to try to report it out. Because what would happen sometimes is language would magically appear an hour or 30 minutes before they had to go vote. And they were voting on things that they had no idea what it was about. And so Charles Munger, who is the son of Charlie Munger, who just passed away from Berkshire Hathaway, ended up putting his own money down, several $1 million to qualify it onto the ballot and to make sure it got passed. In addition to a lot of other different reforms that he did, like one of them that I know you and I have enjoyed along with the press is making sure that all the committee hearings are being videotaped and that there's an archive of those videotapes. Because oftentimes when it was a difficult piece of legislation or they didn't want the public to be aware of it, they would record it, but they would only record the audio and they would, put it in some obscure committee. And so now everything's got to be videotaped. But, it'll be interesting. After this, I'll send it over to Munger and just kind of give him an FYI on this.
Yeah. I'll send you a note on which of those bills they're going to amend within that window.
Okay.
I think there are 3.
Well, I think there's one of interest that you and I kind of have been following along. There's been quite a bit of news, and this is as of the last 10, 15 minutes because it just passed out of, I believe, the state Senate.
Right.
And that one deals with what's AB 1840.
Correct.
And that deals with should the state of California be able to allow undocumented immigrants to participate in a down payment program that is provided with state money for the purchase of a home? And the maximum amount that someone can qualify, and this is why you're beginning to see a lot of these for the general public, is it's basically a state program that provides assistance for up to $150,000 of a down payment into a house. That has been getting quite a bit of coverage. There was a lot of discussion as to whether or not the legislature would be passing it. Obviously, we know that it's a one-party rule, and so in an overwhelming majority, it has now gotten itself out of the Senate. I'm not sure. Does it go back into the Assembly?
I believe it has to still pass the Assembly, but there's a kicker to all this. Kicker 1. So the program in the first year ran out of money in 11 days. So it's not like they had a shortage of people who wanted to take advantage of the program. And here's kicker number 2. There's no money in the budget for it this year. So no one's going to be able to take advantage of it.
So why do they do it then?
It's so they can feel good about themselves. So they can talk about being expansive and inclusive. And I guess when money becomes available, when the budget is more stable, then those who are undocumented would be allowed to submit an application. But yeah, the real kicker is they're not even funding the program this year. So I literally 3 minutes before we got on air, I read it from one of the reporters who has been covering the story. So
that's just. I mean, look. Here's the thing: is you got an election year this right now. You're 70 days away from the election. This particular obviously piece of legislation is going to get a lot of people fired up on both sides. One of them is, okay, so now you've got a program that you just implemented. You think you're doing good, but you have no money tied into it. On the other side, you're going to get people who are really upset saying, look at what we're dealing with inflation. Look at what we're dealing with the high cost of housing. And now you're going to go out and provide assistance of $150,000 or up to $150,000 to citizens of other countries. People, I mean, I don't know. And we've got to look at the legislation a bit closer and see if it changes when it goes into the assembly side of how long do you have to have been in the country? Could it have been 5 years? Could it have been 10 years? And at the same time, what happens if the person gets deported?
right.
Do they steal the money or what happens?
You know, my frustration as a citizen is I just feel that those who are here illegally should be in line first, regardless of whether or not you think they should be allowed to be qualified for the program. And number two, it's not like they have a shortage of applicants now. The first year of the program, they ran out of money in 11 days. My wife's son and his wife applied last year, and that's how I knew they were out of money quickly, because I kind of find out early in the process when these programs were available. I was still working for the Senate last year, and I immediately called them. They immediately went to fill out the application, and they were out of money. So it just baffles my mind when we want to offer programs to people who aren't here legally, even though we don't have the money to fund the people who are here legally and to qualify for the program. You know, it's like a lot of other things. We want to expand before we take care of those who are here first.
Well, and that's been part of the criticism over the last couple of years, where the state of California has increased and allowed for the undocumented to now have access to health care paid for by the state. But the problem is that it's not as though they've increased the number of doctors, the number of hospitals, the number of care centers. And so what has happened is you have now thrown a larger pool of people into that particular system, and it's clogging everything out. You see it right now, even with the immigration court systems. You've got people who've been in line for 8 years or 6 years, and now they've got to wait another 4 to 5 years because you've now thrown millions of more people into that system. And so now you've created some sort of, you've clogged up the system itself. And especially something like this. I mean, if you've got a program that runs out of money in 11 days because there is such a big need by individuals who are citizens, who have been here in California, who are, paying their taxes, just here legally. And you're going to start now throwing in a group of people who are citizens of other countries and are undocumented to the state. I don't know how they go back into, especially in election time, or they go back to the constituents and say this is the right thing to do. There are a lot of programs that the state already provides for folks who are undocumented. You can go and get driver's license. You've got, for the most intended purposes, as you know, a lot of them are able to work here. They get temporary numbers where they can work. But I don't know. I think we've gotten to the point where we just kind of want to have this Christmas tree. And we want to give every single person an ornament.
It makes the argument, people who believe that the end goal is open borders, it makes that argument seem a lot easier to make when these programs continue to be expanded this way. when there are no restrictions for anything. You know, look, we have a need for workers. We'd probably be surprised at how many undocumented workers fill roles of jobs that we probably wouldn't want to do. So I have a level of, I feel like I come from a place where more of a sympathetic place, but there are lines for me, and these offering programs like this really crosses a line, especially when we have people who are here legally who can't get the money for the program.
Right, right. And I think that, I mean, that level of frustration has carried itself forward. I mean, look at how much, I mean, you and I, when we were working in the legislature and we were dealing with a lot of, kind of switching it up a little bit with the homeless situation, there was this great emphasis, like, okay, we're going to provide services, we're going to try to provide housing, we're going to provide all these different things, kind of a hand up for individuals to be able to get themselves back on their 2 feet so that they can try to become productive members of society. And yet the billions and billions and billions of dollars that we have spent, and the state has spent on these programs, obviously taxpayer money, just in the last couple of years, they've spent $24 to $25 billion on homeless programs. You've got the County of Los Angeles, you've got the City of Los Angeles, along with all of these other places that have instituted taxes to go fund programs for homeless. And you're starting to see a tiring of city officials, county officials, residents who are like, I'm just tired of the encampments. I'm tired that nothing's getting done. And I'm tired that more people are being homeless. And so you're starting to see now, especially with the Supreme Court ruling that told the states and the counties, like, yeah, you can get rid of the encampments. You're not going to violate their constitutional rights to be able to sleep outside. And so you're beginning to see
yesterday
this. Go for Larry.
I think yesterday was a great example. For those who live in Sacramento, we had a encampment that was disbanded after being allowed to operate for 2 years. And as we talked last time, it's not pretty when it happens. It looks uncomfortable. And B, it's like, every one of the people who were being quote unquote displaced or removed had alternatives of places to go. They just did not want to go there for a multitude of reasons, many of which were not valid. They accumulated more than one dog, and places wouldn't take more than one place where they were being offered a spot, so they didn't want to go there. So it's this process of homelessness. It's not going to be pretty, but it's necessary. And hopefully we can get to a point where those who are in need get the help they need, the housing they need, and our communities can become safe, because that encampment, the businesses around there said they welcomed that encampment being shut down because of the increase in crime.
Do you think people are getting tired of seeing all these encampments, and it's just now you've got these politicians like they're like, thank God the Supreme Court just came out and said, okay, we can get rid of these. Do you think have you begun to see kind of a sentiment of people are just, I'm just done with this whole thing?
I think people are really sympathetic to the homeless situation and are thrilled that something is finally being done to make our communities safer. And we're not saying any one specific homeless individual is a criminal, but it's clear that when there is a large encampment or a group, illegal drug use increases, crime in the area increases. It's just a fact, and it happens. And I, for one, am glad to see finally, after 4 years of just doing nothing, that communities are at least beginning to address the situation.
No, I agree with you. And another thing that I'm from LA and I go down there quite a bit, and I saw some polling coming out of Los Angeles that showed that voters were very lukewarm on wanting to approve another tax, and this one would be dedicated to homeless. And usually, those kind of things go get approved pretty quickly. They're like, okay, I'm willing to tax myself, a little bit here, everyone is a collective so that we can do programs to get people off the streets and into homes and into services. But I think I'm just getting this sense of people, I think because of inflation, because of the high cost of housing that they're having to deal with, and them not, I mean, people just not seeing the progress of less people on the street. I think people are just getting tired of the situation, and they don't want to pay anymore. And I don't blame them.
To your point, Hector, there was a bond measure in March that was supposed to pass easily. That I forget what it was supposed to fund. It had no opposition.
Support services, yeah, for support services, for mental health support services for
Mental
people
health
who are,
support
yeah.
services. Right, and it was supposed to pass easily. Taxpayers were very leery of that, even though it wasn't raising their taxes, and it barely passed. I mean, the governor delayed and eventually postponed his State of the State speech because he did not know how that proposition was going to pass or not. And to that point, I think any tax on the ballot this year is really going to be in trouble. People are really tired of paying more money for anything. They go to the gas station, they go to the grocery store, they go to the movies, they go anywhere, and they have to pay substantially more than they did just a few years ago. And they're just tired of it. They don't want to pay anymore. I think any tax on the ballot anywhere is going to struggle passing.
Well, and yeah, and Larry, it's like I did this interview yesterday with a radio station. It was in Spanish, and it was a radio bilingüe, and they kept on asking me presidential elections, and I basically I just go, people are just tired. I go, there's an exhaustion that happens. I said, because they're like, well, inflation is going down. I said, no, inflation is going up. It's just not rising at as high as it was the month before that, but it's still going up. I go, it wasn't 3% or 3.2 or 5.4%. It was 2.9% this past month. I go, but it's still moving up. And as I was telling the host, I said, you got to remember is over the last 3.5 years, I said, the price of eggs have gone up 40%. The price of food overall has gone up about 22%. The price of rent has gone up 22%. But when you look at your electricity bill at 33% and you look at your car insurance bill, I go, and this is a big one, is car insurance over the last 3.5 years has gone up 54%. And all the things I just kind of rattled off right now, there are, as you know, there are hundreds of other things because, when you go to the market, you not only do you buy the cereal, the cereal box, right? Honey Bunches of Oats, which is what the girls like in our house. But it seems like the box is smaller, like you're getting less, but you're paying more.
For sure.
And the same thing with the toothpaste. And so you're getting, I don't know, lack of a better word, but you're getting squeezed from all over the place. And
not only inflation, shrinkflation.
Yeah, and you're just getting you're getting hit from everywhere. And there's this thing, this psyche that comes in. It's like, I'm just tired. I'm done. Amy and I were charitable individuals and stuff, and we'll donate to some good causes and stuff. And obviously we donate to, Bella's no longer playing softball, but we'll still donate to the softball to get girls the opportunity to play, and other things. But it's gotten to a point where it's like, okay, how much more do we have to kind of deal with these rising prices? And then it doesn't seem as though there's any type of control over them, or anyone's reining them in. It's just like, well, it's kind of the way it is, and you just kind of deal with it. And there's a frustration that comes with it.
I believe inflation isn't going up as fast as it used to, is because people are finally not buying the products. And so, that is one reason why inflation does reduce, is people don't buy. And I think we're starting to see that. You sent me a story last week where, and that in turn results in higher unemployment. Unemployment now is rising in Southern California. People are tired of paying these higher prices and are stopping and that's going to cost businesses who produce these products jobs,
Yeah.
and going to rise inflation. So people are tired of it. And then to add that, to try to put new taxes on the ballot, I just don't think that's a formula that's going to be very successful this November.
I agree with you on it. And, one area I wanted to touch on, and this is something you and I talked about this past week. It's that there was an article in the Los Angeles Times that looked at, and it was a number I gave out a little while ago, that auto insurance rates have gone up 54% since January of 2021. It is expected to go up another, and we'll put the article in the description down below, but it is expected to go up another 50% in the next 6 to 8 months here in California. And they give a variety of reasons as to why it's expected to go up. Partially is because, and this is what the article says, and the analyst is, partially is because you've got more people driving. You've got, at the same time, you've got different cars now than we had, in the past, where all those all those tech things that you've got in the car before, and there's the example they give is, in the past, if you backed up into a pole and you messed up the bumper, well, you replace the bumper. It's no longer that. You back up into a pole, not only are you replacing the bumper, but you're replacing the sensors. You're calibrating the sensors, and you're calibrating the camera to make sure it all kind of fits in. And so now it's a lot more expensive. There's a lot more that goes into it. And the other interesting thing I found within that story is, it said the other major thing that is happening is medical bills. The cost of medicine has gone up. The cost of treating people for accidents have gone up. And so when you've got the medical costs going up, the insurance is going to go up higher, because when you cause an accident, if there is a hurt individual, all that ends up costing more. And as you know, Larry, the price of a car goes up even itself.
Right.
And so,
as a guy on a semi-fixed income now, I really do pay attention. I didn't think I would. I really do pay attention to that now, and what that sort of impact is going to have on me, because my income is now pretty regulated. And so those who can least afford it are going to be impacted by it most, the poor and the seniors. And you're going to probably see more and more people not being insured as a result of these prices going up so high. Same thing with fire insurance. It's gotten out of control, and car insurance is following.
do you think this gets people out of cars and starts having them take more public transportation, or?
I think it makes people just risk not buying insurance and just taking the risk. I think if public transportation were an easy option, they might, but still most of us are not that close to a spot to take public transportation. And we depend on our car to run over to the local grocery store or the local department store to purchase something.
Yeah.
I think it might make people more dependent on purchasing things online. We'll see that more, I think. People stop driving, fewer miles.
Yeah, that was one of the things where the recommendations is drive less. The other recommendation is, not having had an accident in 3 years, or 3-year time span, a good driving record. But all those things, I mean, even if the advice is drive less, for some people they just can't. Some people, they've got to drive. They live farther away from their jobs because of the place they can afford, and so they're stuck there. And so, do I tell one kid, hey, sorry, we can't do sports here because I got to keep my car under 10,000 miles a year? Because as you know, you drive the kids over to school, you drive the kids over to practice, you drive them back and forth, and so sooner or later, I mean, you're putting all those miles into that vehicle, and when you're limiting all this, it's gotten to a point where the cost of it is just it's just getting absurd. Look, if in 3.5 years it's gone up 50%, there's something wrong there.
Right. And I think you alluded to people taking their kids to sporting events. I think they're going to have to choose between signing their kids up for youth softball, baseball, or swimming, or car insurance, or putting food on the table. And so I think local programs like that are going to begin freeing kids who are not going to be able to participate because they can't afford it.
And so where does this leave like our elected officials or politicians, those on trying to find a solution to all this or trying to find programs to this? I mean, you've got the legislature that is, spending its time right now trying to figure out, okay, what additional programs are we going to put forth? What additional, events or not events, but more, I'd like a better word, more legislation to create more programming that oftentimes comes with a price tag. And yet, what are we doing to people right now where we're leaving them where they could least afford, and they're just barely surviving?
I'll put it to you this way. I don't have and never had great faith in the legislature, particularly dominated the way it is by one party, but they always look for ways to expand programs like they did without having the funds to fund it, rather than trying to figure out ways to get our car insurance lower, our gas prices lower, our electrical prices lower. We never seem to see a lot of stories about that. And that's what I'd like to see out of our legislature, ways to rein in prices instead of ways to expand programs without funding them.
Yeah, or like the Department of Elimination or Department of Cuts, that they look at programs, say, okay, is this working or not? And if it's not working, okay, then we chop it off and we spend that money for other things. But it seems as though it just kind of grows and grows and grows, no matter if the program is working. Like that $25 billion we spent on homeless, they couldn't even produce a report to let us know what programs were working and what programs were not. And
I always say to you, we can't run the recycling program, yet we want to run all these other programs. And that's not to take a swipe at any state worker. Most of them work hard and provide a valuable service to us. But when we have the government running our programs, it's generally a failure. Try to go recycle your cans. Try to find a place to recycle your cans these days. They're far and few between because the program's broke, and now there's very few places that you can even take your recyclables.
Well, interesting you should say that, but because Gavin Newsom's administration, was it 2 weeks ago, put out a report about gas prices, and in their report, one of the recommendations was having the state take over the refinery business for the state of California, and having them take over, having the state of California basically run the oil and gas operation in this state.
Right. Coming from the guy who promised to end homelessness in San Francisco when he was mayor, coming from the guy who has spent $25 billion on homelessness since he started here, coming from the guy who has helped us see our electrical prices increase 30%. Now he wants to take over the oil industry. Good luck with that. And if we think we have high gas prices now, I can only imagine how high they'd be if the government were running it.
Yeah, or the lack of efficiency that would happen with it. I mean, you talked about the recycling program. We saw the EDD program. We've seen this homeless program. We're seeing a variety of different things. I mean, I think we talked about it last time where, he hired that he's got a photographer for, I think they're on the state payroll,
$200,000 a year.
Paying the state, they pay this photographer with taxpayer money, $200,000 a year to follow him around and take pictures of him. That this photographer, I think, has worked for some stars or worked for some celebrities, and so he's got the celebrity photographer to just be able to showcase him in a good way.
I can guarantee you there would be a great internship program through one of our universities that they could give college credits to have college students provide that same service at no cost to the government. And I would be willing to bet we'd get some pretty phenomenal photographs out of that. But yet he wants to have a world-renowned photographer following him around because he thinks of himself as a celebrity governor.
Yeah.